Hello.
Hi.
Patty
Hello
here.
to everybody.
Hello to everybody here joining us today. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. My name's Patty. You probably recognise me from last week and almost every week before that. This is Danielle, who you may not
Hello.
recognise.
I'm Danielle, and I think people will recognise me. I've been with Streamtime for 7.5 years. Come on, give me a break. I'm joining from Melbourne today. Little cameo.
How is the weather down in Melbourne today, Danielle?
Gorgeous.
Oh,
absolutely gorgeous. We've got so much sun.
Winter on the way out, or are you guys still jacketing up?
There are so many flowers popping up on my walk to work. It's really nice.
Oh.
We have real spring happening here.
Oh, beautiful. Glad.
I'm not a hay fever person, so I enjoy it.
Oh, lovely, lovely. I'm not as well. My sister, though, that's a different story. But thanks for joining in today, Danielle. Obviously, Felina's still over in Europe enjoying a holiday, so really grateful that you could jump in and help take the reins on this one.
No worries.
About templates. I mean, there's the added fact that you just love templates, right?
Well, actually, everyone should. They're a time saver. Yeah. So that's why we're having a webinar on them. I did just have a conversation about half an hour ago with a studio director in Brisbane, and he said, I want to bring in my data from my old system before I start using Streamtime. And I said, how about you and I spend 30 minutes together, we set up some templates, you're not going to need that stuff anymore. So, you can templates can help anybody who's maybe new to Streamtime, has been using it forever. It's really also a great chance to review how your jobs have been going as you're setting them up.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to jumping in and diving into this one. There's a couple of different areas we want to talk about, obviously starting with why using templates is good. You've mentioned a couple of things just there. There are a few other things we can chat about, why they're really useful and good use cases for different templates. We'll talk about setting up templates and we'll show you the best way to kind of do this and then actually using them, so putting them into practice. And then at the end, we can kind of look at, what they look like once you've got a few in there, which is great. But before we do kick off today, a little bit of housekeeping. There's a few of you here, so we'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves, get to know each other, using that chat window on the right-hand side. So let us know what your name is, where you're coming from, what your role is, and that's the same space that you can ask questions. So we'll come back at the end and take on some questions. If there are any, if you have specific things, this is a great way to kind of get them answered on the spot. Hey, Nick, nice to see you here. Thanks for tuning in. But yeah, before we get underway, I don't think there's anything else we need to mention, is there?
No. Let's get into it.
Great, awesome.
Let's save these people some time.
Cool. So Danielle, why are we using template jobs? I mean, you already mentioned before a couple of good reasons why. You talked about easier and quicker job creation. Can you think of any other good reasons why we might use templates?
Well, the idea around creating a template job is to save you a lot of time. So these can be templates of jobs that you'll be repeating quite regularly.
Yeah.
They work really well, perhaps if you've got a specific deal you've worked out with a certain client. So you can manipulate rates so that client will always receive these specific rates. It's also really helpful, as I mentioned, when you're setting up your templates, you're actually reviewing how your other jobs performed.
Yeah.
So it's a great chance to see that maybe all of your digital jobs are performing exceptionally well.
Yeah.
So make sure you've got a template that's at that higher scale, so that not only you're saving time, but you've got that minimum standard. And I would suggest that you review these regularly. If you are setting up templates and duplicating them, come back to them every 6 to 12 months to make sure that the figures behind them are as accurate as possible, so that you're making money and saving time.
Totally. There's two completely different ends to that conversation. One is at the start, your job creation, getting things in quickly and easily, and making sure that, you're saving time where you can. But then at the end of the day, reporting on those, making sure that you have got that baseline, that consistency running through those reports, because you're using templates, that the similar formulas kind of going into each of those jobs, and what that's giving you is essentially the right building blocks to help you crunch all of those numbers and that data so that it makes sense in the context of each other.
Something else that I think could sound a little bit airy-fairy, but if you are reviewing your jobs quite closely, and it's something that we do aim to work on within Streamtime in the future, is say you've got a great dynamic between a couple of your designers or a developer and a designer. After a few weeks or months of them working together, you might see that as a really strong selling point. put those people on your team, in your template as the team working on those elements of the job, so that you'll be prompted when you create a brand new job from a template that, you know, James and Sarah work fantastic together. So they're already linked to that. It can save you a lot of time that way.
Totally, and you're absolutely right. That's something we've you know always talked about. A place that we'd love to be one day is, you know, a tool where we're advising you which team members are working well together on jobs based on the productivity, the performance, and the profitability of that job. Like that would be awesome if Streamtime could one day, you know, be your little studio assistant and point out all kinds of tips.
Yeah, think about the satisfaction of your team as well. I think that's pretty important. Might sound a bit out there, but you know, culturally, I think it's important that people consider that stuff, not only money and saving time.
Totally. Other instances for retainers, obviously good for studios that run smaller jobs on higher turnarounds, getting things just in and through, especially if those jobs are taking a really similar structure each time. Templates are the perfect opportunity to save a bit of time there. And yeah, as we said before, it just ensures that consistency throughout your jobs, leading to stronger reporting at the end of the day. I'm going to open up my screen and we can do a bit of a screen share. What we're going to do is talk through setting up a template. So let me just get this one open. And I suppose when we're talking about setting templates up, great to see a few people here, by the way. Thanks all for introducing yourselves. It's awesome. It's exactly what we want these sessions to be, is a place where you guys can get to know each other and share as much as possible. But talking about setting up templates, I think, you know, we're talking about ensuring that there's consistency across jobs over time. But in order to really set a pace for that, I think it's really important to start with items and expenses. Would you agree, Danielle?
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes to saving time, building a list of products and services you use regularly with their specific rates against them and even detailed descriptions on what needs to happen or what your client needs to see, it's going to save you time. Totally. It's going to save you keystrokes. It's going to save you stress. It's going to save you looking out the window, wondering, you know, what should I charge next?
Yeah.
You've got it all in front of you. Even if you're not going to be planning out jobs and using templates, if you haven't built an items and expenses list, I'd highly recommend it.
Fantastic. It's a way you can just set and forget, set up that list and then have it there as you work forward. And so as we can see, I've got my screen here. I'm in the jobs area. So you're all probably familiar with this view. I'm just going to navigate here to the items and expenses area. So come into my profile and settings, items and expenses here. Now, when we're talking about items and expenses, for anyone unfamiliar with this terminology, or even if you're new to Streamtime, it's good to understand that items are what we use to build our jobs. Essentially, they're the different time-based components. So items are things that the team's going to track time against, and we can set these up like a master list in the back end here. You can see I've got some artwork. I've got a little description there, artwork and design, concept development, design as we kind of work through this list, all with different hourly rates based on what we sell that service for. Essentially just pre-populating this information here so that it makes it really easy to get onto my jobs. But also what this means is setting it up is that I've got that set item, which I can just select, meaning that it's going to be consistent throughout those jobs as we work on them in the future. Expenses as well, you can set up here, which are useful too. Starting with a strong items and expenses list really sets the tone for future work. So that's a really key thing to do when you're.
And something I mentioned a little earlier about revisiting your templated jobs, which are kind of like what your starting point is. We'd also highly, highly recommend for a profitable business that you go back and check your hourly rates quarterly, 6 monthly, or at minimum every year if you're planning on growing your business. You know, hopefully your standard of work is improving, and using Streamtime, you're probably working pretty efficiently. So that's probably leading to you guys being able to raise those rates regularly. So don't just set and forget, even though it is really handy in light of saving time. Please revisit that and update those rates whenever you can.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. And that's one that was definitely, reiterated by Catherine Williams a couple of weeks ago in our webinar. If anyone here wasn't on that webinar, didn't catch it, I couldn't recommend going over and watching it enough. We had a session with Catherine Williams, who is a financial and business consultant, and we spent an hour going through a list of questions that we've collected from Streamtime clients and users and addressing those. And one large part of that conversation was sell rates. And there you go, Danielle's just posted it there for us. So if anyone's interested in watching it, click through and check that out. It's great. But she absolutely says every year at least you should be increasing your sell rates. And a great time to do that is December, January, over that New Year's break where the client's off, you're off. It is just, she kind of explains exactly why that's a good time to do it in that video. So I'll let you go watch that, but plenty of good reasoning and work in there.
Let's set up some templates, Patty. Let's do it.
I'm going to create a new job here and let's create a social media assets.
And that's something that I might want to point out as well is the focus is templates, but what they are is they're just templated jobs. We're really just giving them a name of template. So we're still creating it like a normal job. There's a few things that we're going to do that are going to make this a template. So you're likely going to set it up for yourself instead of for a client. Of course, we need a company to do the work for. Another thing is we're going to use labels to call it a template, just to make sure we can remove it from any lists or reports you guys are working on. And then there's a third thing that's really important that Patty will show you shortly, and that's to archive this job. So again, it's not going to be at the forefront of everything you're working on.
Exactly. So we're going to make it really clear from this point on that we're doing a social media assets template. That's what this job is. And this job is not going to be worked on. It's not going to be a live job. It's merely going to sit in our system as a template. I'm going to add some items here. So let's say for our social media work that we do, we'll need some artwork. I'm going to keep this one in pause. I'm going to add in some, maybe some design work too. Keep that one in pause. And maybe some retouching too. We might need a bit of that. Cool. So we've paused these all down, and depending on the nature of your work, your templates, and the project that will actually use this template to work on in the future, you may or you may not want to add things like time planned here, team members, sub items, or additional information. So
personally, I think to save as much time as possible, you would add as much detail as possible. And that's where I was mentioning earlier that you could see some real benefits around putting in rates and teams. In light of that, though, the time it took Patty to get to this stage could be one click away for you if you've got a template set up.
Exactly. All right. So let's add some team members in here. Let's say Danielle and Nate are going to be on artwork. Let's say we normally budget about 20 hours for these jobs. We might actually bump up this hourly rate. We can do that here too. Or maybe this is specific for a certain client where we
that's something I was going to maybe mention is that if you were another use case for setting up templates could be if you've got an agreement with a client around using a discounted rate, potentially even charging someone more. Instead of having your items and expenses list coming through with detailed figures that you then need to apply discounts to or make edits to, you can set up a template outlining everything you'll be doing for that client with their hourly rates against these items. So each time you're working with that client, you can duplicate that template and it'll have a list of their prices. And it's just a case then of removing the items or the things you're not going to be doing for that specific job.
Cool.
Paul, we're going to address that question around having a template section shortly. So once we've set this one up, we're going to show you how you can kind of group them all together and access them as a favorites list. There'll be a list of all your templates in the one place.
Awesome. So just explaining exactly what I've done here, I have gone and planned some hours onto each of these. I've added team members to each of these items, and even in a couple of instances, I've just thrown in some sub items too. Let's say across all of our artwork, we do tend to do a first pass and a second pass before we get that all approved. That's just standard for us. Now, is there anything else that I might want to add to this particular template, Danielle?
So it does depend on the different instances. This is a really great place to start. If you're wanting to get very detailed, something that you could look at doing as well is actually having templated quotes. So what I mean by that is you would raise a quote against this job.
Yep.
And that way that when you choose to duplicate or use the social media assets template,
Yep.
you can choose to have the quote come through. Now, what that means is you're not going to edit this detail to say what your client needs case by case. You're going to have the detail from the template coming through. So I'm not sure how many of you guys will plan out your job, create a quote and make edits here, but we're giving you the option to not need to make those changes. So if there's different language you use for your client populated in here on the template, it's linked to the job and you'll have the option to use that quote when you choose to duplicate this template.
Good call. So what I've done there is I've merged that retouching into our artwork. That's normally considered a part of our artwork in terms of what we sell, although we'd prefer to track time against it separately internally on our job plan in Streamtime. We want a different place for the team to track that time. So I've added it as a separate item on the job, but at this quoting phase, I've added it together just by merging it. So we can see that 3,000 and 1,000 has now become 4, and I've actually cleaned up all the descriptions there just to make it a really clean and accessible, clear quote for our client. We don't need to say anything else here.
Yeah, so all the things you're normally updating, we won't need to do that next time we use this template. Another little point would be maybe edit out the word template from the quote name. Not sure if everyone's aware that you can do this, but the quotes are all about you using the language for your client. So changing the name of the job if you wanted to, go for it. And that's what we've just done here.
Good call. Nice one.
So yeah, setting up quotes is really handy. It'll save you changing all of those figures. And also social media assets, perhaps you're always purchasing advertising. And that's an expense guaranteed whenever you're going to be doing this job. So again, we can create these expenses. A couple of points around this, because it is just a template, keep your costs at a 0 because we're not actually incurring these costs against the template. And another thing, I like to use labels against my expenses when they're not real, which is what we're setting right now. It's kind of like a placeholder. Next time we're doing a social media assets job, we're going to be having the advertising expense sitting there, and all you need to do is update the figures.
Cool. So we'll get that $0 cost rate, selling for $1,500, save that one down. You might even have a preferred supplier to use there. You could save that in too. Thinking about what else we could add more labels to this job if we wanted to.
Yeah, so depending on the kind of reporting that you're really doing, if it's a social media job, to save yourself clicking social media next time you're setting it up, you can have that particular tag against it.
Exactly. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to archive this one down to lock it down as a template. Archive that.
So why are we doing that, Paddy?
I'm doing that because I don't want this job to show up in any of my reports. I also don't want people to confuse this job for an active live job. By archiving it, I'm going to be removing it from my WIP list and any typical reports that I'll tend to run. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. But what I can do now that I know I've archived this one is that I can duplicate it and I can turn it into a live job. So let's say we've got a new social media assets project that's just come in, a new client's approached us, they love the work that we do, and we're going to create a new template here. So I'm going to get rid of
new job, not template.
A new job, sorry. Template's definitely the flavor of the week here. Social media assets. Who's the new client, Danielle?
Well, remove Streamtime. We'll see who's coming up. Cool. We'll make it someone massive. AS Color, ASOP. I love them all.
You love ASOP. Let's go ASOP. Alrighty, so we're going to bring across that quote that we created. We can see we've already got a few options ticked here. What this modal's asking us is what we want to bring onto the new template, or the new job, sorry, from our template. So quotes, any expenses or labels, let's say all of these things. That's typical in this instance. What we're doing here is giving the ability to pick and choose all sorts of different things that we may or may not want to include. Straightforward. And here we go.
Yeah.
What you have to do.
Done. So now we've got the brand new job in front of us. It's really just up to you guys to send the quote, which is just as simple as viewing it, pressing send, and then setting up those items potentially with the right dates and having your team actually start the work.
Exactly.
So we're really trying to minimize the admin work if you're going to go to the effort of creating templated jobs. In this example, it's a nice small job that we're probably doing quite regularly. There's some other great examples of the types of jobs people would set up templates for. And, this is a really small one. You might want to think about large digital jobs that have a massive amount of things that need to be done every single time. We're talking about 80 different sub-items relating to something or a phase. So thinking about how long it would take for you to set one of those up and manage that every time, you may as well just create one and make those edits as the jobs come in.
Exactly. It's a little bit of work to get those templates set up, but what it's saving you in time and work in the future is massive. And especially when it comes to the ease of setup and, that consistent that we were mentioning before when it comes to reporting, it's a no-brainer if you can get away with using templates. So all I've done there is pop in those dates. I also removed the template label. I selected to bring across labels, which is going to include all of them. Now, the one we do want to remove in that instance is template. So it's probably easier, especially if you're working with multiple labels, 2 or 3, it's easier to bring across them all and delete the one that you don't need as opposed to leaving them out and then adding the ones that you are trying to remember that you need. It's always just a bit easier. And we're removing that template label because this job is live. It's no longer a template. We include this one in our reports. And as you see in a second, we're going to be removing using that template label to exclude templates from reports.
Before we jump up to setting up reports, and that's a question that Paul had asked,
yes.
I do just want to point out that you guys have probably noticed the items have come through as paused. And that's something that you may not be seeing very regularly as you're creating jobs case by case. That's because we're prompting you to just get started on the work and your items are set to live. So what we're doing here is we know that we're about to bring potentially 20 new items straight into your system. So instead of setting them live, because if they had team members against them, they'd be showing up on their to-do screens, we've set them at this paused state so that you can choose when you're ready to share that with your team, to share that onto the schedule as well. So I just thought I'd point it out because at the moment, when you're planning jobs, everything is live to start with. So you just need to choose against the item that you're going to set it live. It'll show up on the to-do screen. It'll show up on your schedule as well. Another easy way of doing this is on the schedule itself when you're booking the workout.
So if I do the schedule here, you see I can come through, I can see what's paused, who's working on it, and then flick that into play here, for example, if I do want to get in and schedule that work. And what that looks like on our team members to-do screens when we are working with active and paused statuses. I'll skip through to Danielle here. And I can see in Danielle's item list on the right-hand side that discover work.
It's right down at the bottom, I think. Oh no, social accounts. Might need a refresh on this one, Patty.
Yeah, good call.
Or maybe I might need a refresh. There's a lot of overdue stuff in there. Good thing it's a fake database.
Okay, it's popped down the bottom there. So I can see artwork is due in 9 days' time. It's now appearing in that list, whereas previously it wouldn't have. That's because we've whacked it into play there. Now, heading back to the jobs area, what would be great to kind of show you guys is exactly a place where we can keep our templates. And I'd suggest setting up a favorite, which is a report of a place to put all of your template jobs. And I've already got one set up here. You can see here, it's called templates.
Cool.
And one thing you'll notice here is that I'm including my archive jobs and my job label is template. So in this list, everything's grayed out. That's indicating an archive status. I can see that social media assets template is sitting there down the bottom there. And that's simply because I've just added it in and I'm just applying this criteria to find it.
I think it's really important you guys understand that is the best way to find these templates, because if you're just searching the jobs, it will not include archived. And we've done that on purpose because we want all of your reporting to be accurate on what you've actually planned, what you're actually doing, and the value of the work in your studio right now, not placeholders, which is what your templates are.
Exactly. So you'll notice that by default, that job status does have that lighter gray shade there, which is indicating we've applied some default filters, removing those archived jobs. So as you said, Danielle, that's all done in the name of getting valuable numbers to you as quickly as possible. But if you do want to dig down and find those other things, we're going to start to look at our archive jobs and then apply that job label for templates there, which is going to show us just that list. Cool. So what another great example of, or another great case for using template jobs is retainer work. Now, we have run webinars on retainers in the past, so if this is repeated information for you guys, sorry about that. But I just do want to exemplify that because retainers tend to be agreed to on 12-month contracts or so, and there's value in creating one retainer template job and then setting up a different retainer template job for each month of that contract, for example. The reason you can do that is, first of all, so the jobs are there, ready to go. I'd recommend setting them up in advance so that when that month rolls around, you can just get going on it. The other advantage of that is it keeps everything consistent. You're looking at everything across that same retainer project, and you're also able to use that early job creation to start forecasting and the cash flow and revenue that's coming through the business. And I've got this Streamtime retainer project set up here, which will show you what that looks like over a period of time. So for example, this is a 12-month contract starting in April this year, pushing through till March next year. And I probably have set up a template for this job, but you can see the consistency running through here. I've got the same budget, I've got the same invoiced amount through, and that's because I've used that initial project. And obviously the items and the hours planned on those items on those jobs, and maybe the team members working on them, are going to be the same too, because they've been working on this particular project. Just helps me get that information up and out there.
Yeah. So I guess this is kind of just showing that duplicating jobs, whether they're templates or not, will save you a lot of time.
Totally. Great. Well, as we can see, we've already addressed Paul's question there. We've only got a few minutes left in today's session, and I think we've hit the end of exactly everything that we wanted to show you today. If there were any final questions, then feel free to drop them in.
Yeah, chuck us any questions. If anyone wants a hand setting some of these up, use the help button in your menu to book a time in with one of us, and we can make sure you're on the right track. And aside from that, we'll be putting a recording of this live shortly. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for having me too, Patty. I'm actually going to be doing another webinar in a couple of weeks, everybody. If anyone's using Xero or is liking or is likely going to think about it shortly, we're doing a Streamtime Xero webinar in 2 weeks. And Patty, did you want to let everyone know what's happening next week?
Next week, oh geez, you're testing my memory here, Danielle.
Oh, well, it's a very exciting webinar with the Design Business Council, am I right?
Yeah, it is.
That's why I'm not involved next week. We're getting real professional gurus in.
Exactly, yeah. Next week, we're going to be catching up with Carol and Greg from the Design Business Council and talking about planning and pricing projects in Streamtime. Or in Streamtime, or just generally, they are essentially consultants and have over 60 accumulated years of experience in the industry. And what they do is they specialize in bridging the gap between business and design. So they work lots with different studios, offering consultations, mentorship, and workshops on improving how businesses are being run. So we've been lucky enough to have locked them in for our next webinar. So show up to that one, and I'm sure you'll get plenty to take away with you. But thanks again for tuning in, Danielle. Awesome to have you on, and I'm looking forward to talking about Xero with you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks. Yeah, we're going to kill it.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everybody. Catch you later.
See you later.